Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a deeply fascinating psychological irony. We're going to unpack exactly why we, you, me, all of us, actually deliberately seek out negative emotions. I'm talking about terror, anxiety, and just pure dread.
Think about the last time you watched a truly terrifying horror film. Your heart's pounding out of your chest, your palms are sweaty, maybe you're even watching through your fingers, but you just can't look away, right? Why on earth do we gladly hand over our hard-earned money to feel like we're in mortal danger? It completely defies logic. Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at the science behind the screams.
Section 1. The Psychology of Fear. Let's set the academic foundation and figure out our strange attraction to the terrifying.
To make sense of this, we need to look at three heavy-hitting psychological theories. First up, Sigmund Freud. He suggested that horror is all about the uncanny. Basically, it digs up these unconscious, primitive fears and urges that we normally keep buried deep down. Then, you've got the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who gave us the idea of catharsis. He believed we watch terrifying stuff to basically purge our own negative, aggressive emotions. And third, there's dispositional alignment theory. This one takes a slightly more vindictive angle, claiming we actually just really enjoy the thrill of watching the bad guys get what's coming to them in the end.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Enter Dr. Dolph Zillman and his excitation transfer theory. This actually explains the physical reality of watching horror. Dr. Zillman argues that the awful, intense, negative feelings created by suspense, that terrible knot in your stomach, they actually act like a multiplier. They intensify the positive emotional release you feel when the hero finally wins. So the higher your anxiety peaks, the bigger the euphoria when those credits finally roll.
But there's a massive catch here, and it's something called unrealism. See, this whole excitation transfer thing, it only works because of the stark contrast between reality and the screen. Let's be real. If you were actually being chased by a monster, it wouldn't be a fun time. But the screen, it provides a safe, risk-free boundary. It's this neat little psychological container that lets us experience the absolute peak of human thrill, fully knowing that the danger literally cannot touch us.
Moving on to Section 2, the Madam Koi Koi legend. Let's look at how a famous Nigerian boarding school ghost story perfectly weaponizes these exact psychological triggers.
Gather round, because every great explainer needs a good ghost story, right? In Nigerian folklore, there's this terrifying legendary figure known as Madam Koi Koi. The story usually starts with a deeply cruel, sadistic secondary school teacher. She was known for three things: her beauty, her absolute wickedness, and her signature red heels. Now, depending on who's telling the myth, she was either fired after physically injuring a student and then died in a horrific crash, or she was fatally beaten by her own students in this desperate act of revenge. Either way, her violent end birthed a vengeful spirit destined to haunt boarding schools forever. The absolute genius of this legend is its auditory trigger. Picture this. It's the dead of night. Lights are out, and isolated students hear this chilling, rhythmic clicking echoing against the dorm floor. Koi? 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 It's the sound of her single red heel getting closer. Just picturing it kind of makes the hairs on your arms stand up, doesn't it? This is a perfect cultural example of that excitation transfer process we talked about earlier. The agonizing suspense of those slow, rhythmic footsteps manufactures the exact dread that Freud and Zillman were talking about.
And what exactly happens when she finds you? Well, the legend says that Madame Koi Koi haunts the most vulnerable spaces in a school: dormitories, empty hallways, toilets. She specifically targets kids who are all alone, demanding her missing heel, slapping students, and just relentlessly tormenting anyone unlucky enough to cross her path in the pitch black. It is literally a masterclass in exploiting our primal fears of the dark and being isolated.
Section 3. Visual language of horror. So, how exactly do filmmakers take the terrifying essence of a campfire story like that and engineer it onto a screen?
Well, cinematographers actually have a specific toolkit for hacking our brains, and one of their absolute go-to techniques is low-key lighting. This is a technique where they intentionally use a single, strong key light to cast heavy, harsh shadows all over the set. It's the exact opposite of that bright, even lighting you see in comedies. By basically bathing the whole scene in shadows, filmmakers instantly manufacture mystery, suspense, and drama. They are forcibly making our brains imagine what on earth is hiding just out of sight in the dark. And achieving this isn't just movie magic, it's heavy machinery. Film crews use literal, physical tools, like this spotlight right here, deliberately aimed and blocked to paint those terrifying shadows. They are essentially crafting a visual trap to manipulate those deep, primitive fears Freud pointed out.
Now imagine combining that low-key lighting with a wide cinematic 16:9 aspect ratio. Picture a dark, abandoned school hallway at night. Honestly, pretty much exactly like the ones Madame Koi Koi haunts. Throw in a red emergency glow, maybe some fog. By forcing our eyes to scan across this wide, dark canvas, filmmakers are deliberately targeting our collective subconscious. We're kept hyper-alert, desperately scanning the edges of the frame, just waiting for the threat to jump out.
Section 4. When fiction meets reality. Now we're transitioning from the safety of movie unrealism to a chilling real-world event that grounds everything we've just talked about.
If we compare the classic tropes of the Madame Koi Koi myth, the boarding school setting, the supernatural darkness, the isolated victims, with the facts of a very real break-in at the Chandraganda Ashrama Girls' School in Telangana, the parallels are honestly striking. But in this reality, we aren't dealing with a ghost. We're dealing with a real human intruder.
The factual timeline of this real-world incident is incredibly chilling. Right in the middle of the night, a young male intruder actually scaled the wall of the girls' hostel. He deliberately cut the main power, plunging the entire building into pitch darkness. He then entered the girls' room and behaved indecently. The girls, spotting him in the dark, screamed in absolute terror, which thankfully caused the intruder to flee.
This right here is where that psychological safety net of unrealism we talked about completely vanishes. When we watch a movie about a haunted hallway, it's fun because we know we're safe on the couch. But the stark reality of the Telangana incident highlights true vulnerability. The very next morning, the outraged parents of these girls arrived demanding answers from the teachers, specifically about a massive security failure, the lack of working CCTV cameras. This wasn't some campfire story they could just turn off. It was a terrifying breach of real-world safety that led to a police complaint.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Why We Crave Horror. Let's figure out why we continue to build these fictional containers for such primal, real-world anxieties. Cultural historian DJ Skull hit the nail on the head when he said that horror films are a reflection of our societal fears. Horror entertainment doesn't just exist in a vacuum, it is deeply, inextricably linked to the social crises of our time. We use the horror genre as a kind of exhaust valve. By watching terrifying things happen in a highly controlled, safe environment on a screen, we're actually subconsciously trying to process the very real societal failures and vulnerabilities that exist the second we walk outside.
We've seen how filmmakers literally hack our brains with lighting. We've seen how folklore terrifies us with sound. And we've definitely seen how real life is always scarier than fiction. So I want to leave you with this. The next time you're craving that adrenaline rush, the next time you turn off the lights and put on a scary movie, what underlying, real-world anxiety are you truly trying to purge? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning what you watch.